is the Liberal housing crisis. Because after the lost Liberal decade, housing costs have doubled. They've risen faster than in any other G7 country. Toronto and Vancouver are now the most expensive housing markets in all of North America, worse than New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Seattle. In fact, many cities that have more income, more people, and less land have much more affordable homes. Before the lost Liberal decade, it took 25 years to pay off a mortgage. Now in Toronto, it takes 29 years to save up for a down payment. Before the Liberal lost decade, the average house price in Canada was $450,000, an almost laughably small sum of money. That was when I was housing minister, and those were the results we have. But today, if you live in Vancouver, you need to earn $250,000 to get qualified to buy the average house. Here in Toronto, it's $220,000. Liberals caused the housing crisis by inflating demand with out-of-control immigration and money printing, and blocking supply with taxes and bureaucracy that stop home builders. Now, it's very interesting that the worst housing inflation of the lost Liberal decade happened after Mark Carney became Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. It was in 2020 when that began, and the housing costs in the 2 years after Carney took over as the economic advisor went from $533,000 to $835,000. And in case there's any doubt about this, let me quote from the Financial Post headline in 2017. Canada's housing bubble can be traced back to Mark Carney and his bias for easy money policy. It's not just the Financial Post, it's London's Daily Telegraph, which comments on Mark Carney's time as the governor there, where he caused a housing crisis in that country. They said that he had the, quote, reverse Midas touch. The former, quote, the former governor of the Bank of England has left a trail of destruction behind his glossy jobs. The Telegraph also reported that just as he did when he kick-started the housing crisis in Canada, Mr. Carney was once again printed too much money in the wake of the financial crisis. And as housing prices ballooned, economists criticized him for a, quote, missed opportunity to make homes more affordable. Quoting again the Telegraph, by the time he left office, Carney had created a mess which his successors have struggled to clean up. But Carney wasn't finished wrecking the housing market at that point. He brought his knack for inflating housing costs to Brookfield. In a report by the Office of the Canadian Federal Housing Advocate from 2022, Brookfield was criticized as being one of the leading North American companies engaged in predatory financialization of the real estate market.
This hurts! Nothing to see here, please!
This is when a giant corporation like Brookfield buys up rental properties, makes a few cosmetic changes, and then raises rents substantially with the knowledge that residents cannot move and will be forced to absorb the costs. He's still invested in Brookfield, which profits from predatory financialization. How is Mark Carney ever going to combat greedy corporations ripping off our working class when he's profiting from it and when he still has those investments knowingly? That's why it's time for Mr. Carney to come clean about all of his investments, reveal his conflicts, which he admits that he has. And instead, we need a Prime Minister who will stand up for the Canadian people and not for those who profit off of inflation. After the lost Liberal decade, for the first time in the history, the dream of home ownership is lost for a generation, at least lost for now. In BC and Ontario, the cost of a new home, 30% of the cost of a new home, though, is just taxes. More money for a new home goes to bureaucrats in office buildings than goes to these builders who actually build the homes. It's incredible. And the people who build the homes cannot afford to live in them. That is fundamentally unjust, and it will only get worse with a fourth Liberal term. And home building is down. Toronto construction was down 38% last year. Vancouver down 16%. Ottawa down 21%. Winnipeg down 7%. And it's not going to get better after the fourth term. Today, the worst immigration minister in the history of the country, who also happens to be the worst housing minister in the history of the country, Sean Fraser, announced that after 10 years helping bring about the lost Liberal decade, he will be running again for Mark Carney. So you're going to have the same Liberal ministers, the same Liberal MPs, the same Liberal strategists, making the same Liberal promises as they did to bring about the housing crisis if they're elected for a fourth term.
No, 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 no. Wait, 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 wait. Wait, 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 wait.